one of the goals that we had, I guess, is to just like educate the public
Yeah.
on the tattoo world,
Right.
tattoo knows.
Yeah.
So we're going to do that here with this episode.
Sweet.
I was telling you yesterday about how, like, when I first started getting tattooed, I'd just walk into a tattoo shop and be like,
Sure.
take my money and give me a tattoo. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know what a good tattoo is. I don't know what a bad tattoo is.
Sure.
In your mind, to somebody who's walking into a tattoo shop for the first time, what like makes a good tattoo?
Well, I think the thing that I had learned after I had applied many bad tattoos is weird. Like, I remember doing tattoos early in the day, being self-taught and knowing that they weren't good, but I don't know that I knew what was lacking. And so it wasn't until I finally got into like a professional setting where I learned that there's 3 basic fundamentals that any good tattoo should have, and that's clean lines, smooth shading, and solid saturation. So smooth shading would primarily be found in like a black and gray tattoo, because that's all it's made up of. But it can also be found as like the foundation of a color tattoo also. And then solid saturation, that would mean that the color isn't splotchy. It's called holidays whenever you can kind of see through it, little specks and spots after it's healed. Sometimes whenever it's fresh, but if those 3 things are all present in an artist's portfolio, at least, then that's what you could pretty much rest assured that you're at least going to get the most basic good tattoo. And then you can kind of build off of that from there with like overall composition and how do they use color theory and all that kind of stuff that you could really that's what makes an even better tattoo. But yeah, I would say whenever somebody, because I think what happens, and what you said is the prime example of this kind of thought that I had over the years developed, and that's the general public, I think, might just assume, oh, there's a tattoo shop, I'm gonna go in and probably walk out with a decent tattoo. But we kind of have all the time people coming in like, oh, I got this tattoo at so and so, and I can't stand it. And it's kind of like I mean, I have those as well. And so it's like, well, instead of assuming that just because there's a tattoo shop on the corner that, oh, I'm probably just gonna get a good tattoo, well, let's help educate people on what does that even look like. So when you go in, you thumb through portfolios, or you're checking out portfolios online, just look for those clean lines, smooth shading, solid saturation. That's the basic bones.
Yeah. And like, if you go into a shop, especially if it's your first tattoo, and you get it something, you walk out and you're not like super excited about it, that puts a bad taste in their mouth for
completely
tattooing, for tattooers, for tattoos. And it's just like one person like that tells somebody about their poor experience, and that can just create a whole, you know what I mean?
Well, and I think what's even worse along with that is that sometimes if that happens, now there's an artist specific name and or a tattoo shop associated with that bad experience. More importantly, in my mind, is like, that's what that person carries around with them from that moment on.
Yeah, it's a billboard, of your work.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like, oh, I wish it was a better experience, or I wish it was a better tattoo. And so I feel for those people, and that's hence why, like, yeah, let's get the public educated in a way to combat bad tattoos. Like, well, let's help people know what good ones look like.
Yeah,
what they're supposed to look like, at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good question.
What do you think? Let's say you're looking to get your first tattoo. How do you think somebody should navigate looking for the right artist or the right shop in general? I personally, I've told you before, I've been in shops before walk in, what do you want? They give it to you, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah. Are you?
necessary. And like, I never went back, and
Sure.
don't plan on going back. What are some things just that you should look for, I guess, or what's a good place to start?
Uh, you know, these days, because there's so many shops and so many artists, at least in Minnesota, um, I think probably the easiest way, obviously, is for people to. Chances are, people are going to say, "Oh, go see my guy,"
Yeah.
and that's so and so. And whether or not that's how you find a person, or you're just, you drive by the shop every day. I mean, I guess it's kind of like the old fashioned way versus the new fashioned way. So I'm just trying to think of like the new fashioned way. Obviously, I think Google reviews do. I mean, I look at them.
Yeah, I do too now.
When I go to a place, and that's kind of my deciding factor. And I like to look at, especially like a restaurant or something. It's like, well, I want to see pictures of the menu. I want to see pictures of the food or the drink. And so it goes. And also, it's like, well, what are the surrounding areas like too? Is this a sketchy neighborhood? So I think that's a good starting point. And then as far as like finding an artist, most of us are on Instagram, and I've just heard from people who are going through that decision-making process is like, oh, I looked at your page. It seemed like, you weren't crazy. You seem to we share the same maybe values or whatever. I think that can also help a person when they're looking for that artist. So that's kind of like the new fashioned way, but the old fashioned way would probably be, I mean, this is where conventions can help too, is that you get all these artists under one roof, and a person can go in and just kind of get a vibe for that artist that maybe they've been looking at. Because even though the work is stellar, the person may not be. And so those two things, I think, should go hand in hand, because you might be the greatest person on earth, but you're doing terrible tattoos. Well, that's a bad experience. Or you might be a really, really great artist, but you're lacking massive personal skills, or like you said, just like, get the hell out of here. You didn't even get a greeting when you walk in the door. That's also a bad experience. So it's, how do you balance finding those two things? I think it's difficult these days just because there are so many, but I think word of mouth is probably going to be the best thing. Because hopefully people are like, this dude is XYZ. Like, a lot of my clients are military or police. They're like, he's super supports the military, blah, blah, blah. Does great work. Whatever they say other than that, that's super helpful for people. And then, I guess you can always just walk into a shop and see what that experience is like. Now granted, sometimes we have this here, but if you're walking in, the music's blaring at an ungodly level that you can't even think. And you don't get greeted, or the walls are like, whatever, painted blood red, or, no offense to any of that stuff, but if that is, just kind of go with your gut on maybe how you feel when you walk in, and then do you want to be spending hours of your life in there?
Right. Well, and like, honestly, even to your point of like music blasting or yada yada, that might not be your environment, but it could be somebody else's, where it's like, hey, you guys could all be cool, but like, I would feel more comfortable in this other space. I think that's a really good point. Just like, go in and get a vibe for it, maybe talk to somebody.
Right. So if you don't have any referrals or anything like that, then online search, Google, sometimes I don't know, I think I would look for established places too. What does that mean? I guess, like, I mean, we're creeping up on 8 years as of today, and we've got a lot of reviews on Google, and that have been built up over those many years. So I think maybe that time of being established compared to Google reviews, that might be a good combination versus like if the shop's only 3 months old and they got a lot of, it's like, well, how did you accomplish? There's probably a lot of your friends leaving Google reviews for you, which I get it. Like you want to move up in the ranks or whatever, but I've never wanted to advertise on Google or Yelp or any of that stuff. I'd much rather it happen organically.
Yeah.
Like I want to earn those spots.
Yep.
So I think right now as it sits, we've got a 4.9.
Okay.
And from what I've heard, other like business people, they're like, that's as good as you're ever going to get.
There's always going to be somebody.
There's always going to be that 3-star review with no comment, and you're like, well, how can I even improve? Then I don't even know what to build on. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard from somebody, I don't remember who, but they said something too where like the best place to look, especially if there's a massive catalog. So if you're looking at like your local Culver's or something, they're like, look at like the middle of the road reviews, because the ones that are super low and the ones who are like stellar, there's some sort of emotional thing behind it most of the time.
Interesting.
Or like right in the middle, you may get a better interpretation. Obviously going in, it's way better than that. But but I agree with you. Like I've seen that before where I've looked at reviews of places and it's like, that was definitely all your friends. Cause like this place sucks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Why would they even say that?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I've never known how to like pitch this to people who maybe do work here or want to work here, but I think like a cleanliness too, of like how do we keep ourselves? And granted, yes, get scruffy or get lazy, but it's like if a person cares about that, then they're probably going to for sure care about you. If they care about how they're treating their body, they might care for yours too. And honestly, I've even heard too, like take it even a step further. If you really want to like get super nitpicky, is like, look at the tattoos that artist has. Are they full of turds? Well, that means one, they're looking at turds every day because they own them. And two, maybe they don't even know
their
what
standard might be low.
And when I heard that, I'm like, that helped me make a decision to be like, okay, I'm going to stop getting tattooed by this guy. I'm going to wait and like get tattooed by these dudes, that I've always wanted to get tattooed by. But it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Because honestly, it sucks to say, but these days I'm surprised when I see a good tattoo out in the wild.
Yeah.
And I mean, that really does suck to say, because that means that I'm so used to seeing bad tattoos out there on people that when I see a good one, I usually try to figure out who did it, because I like to think that I know either personally or of, or am familiar with enough artists' work that are doing good work. And I'm like, oh, did so-and-so do that? No, it was this person. Oh, yeah, okay, I know that person too, but I wouldn't have guessed that. So I don't know, maybe that's a weird thing, but then you kind of have to know the difference between a good and bad tattoo.
Right.
So,
and yeah, once you, like one thing I've started to kind of pick up on a little bit is like, once you familiarize yourself, especially I think with good work, like artists will stick to, I don't know, like your roses. Like I can see a rose tattooed on somebody.
Sure.
And probably like 85% of the time I could be like, yeah, that's yours. Just because you have your things and it's solid and it's good and it looks good. So it's like, if something's good, you did, why?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a pretty good point for sure.
But yeah, I definitely was like on the front end of the social media kind of tattoo world. So like, for me, it was like 80% of like my body's like, look at this dude, my badass pulling up his sleeve, and like that's the guy you went to. And I think too, for any business really, that's still like the best advertisement is word of mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who did your HVAC? Because mine sucks.
Yeah.
All of those things. Who built your porch? Because I can't even use mine. All that stuff for sure. I mean, I think that's also like the biggest compliment too, is when people are referring you or referring your shop, or or both, it's like, oh, that's super cool. I
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate that. And I think that I would say probably 90% of the people who come in, that's how they either found an artist
Mm-hmm.
or found the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So because really, there's a million ways to advertise out there. Who knows which one's the best these days?
Right.
Who knows if you're going to make it on the algorithm?
Mm-hmm.
So word of mouth is always the greatest. So yeah, I would say, to kind of come full circle, maybe, is like, if you know people who are heavily tattooed, ask them.
Yeah.
Granted, you see that they got good tattoos based on the brief description of what makes a good tattoo that we
Yeah.
gave earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, even for like an untrained eye, especially for like a bigger piece, like you can tell if it looks good on the body or not majority of the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, just like you said, just finding those people and,
Right.
and asking.
Right. Yeah.
One thing that I hear people say all the time, and I'm sure that you've heard a million times, it's like, oh, my cousin or my buddy or so and so drew this. I want this tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great,
Sure.
fine, yeah,
Yep.
but not everything can make a good tattoo.
True.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that? Why couldn't I take something from a magazine and just give it to you and be like, I want this? Maybe you could do it, but
Sure.
why would you
Should
maybe
you do it?
avoid that? Yeah, should you do it is a better way of saying that.
Well, I think unless I think what I've seen personally, I mean, there is a reason behind that, but what I think I kind of lead by saying is that, I've seen it when you kind of we started talking, when Anna came on, and even other people that have come on to want to learn tattooing. It's like, I can see that you draw, and that's cool, and that's great, and you draw good. But here's the reason why it wouldn't make a good tattoo. Maybe it's entirely too busy, or it's got super, super tiny detail that could be accomplished in a tattoo. Like, you could do it, but would that last 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And so I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that I see people wanting to get into tattooing is like, okay, I see that you draw. Now let's show you how to draw for tattoos. There is two completely separate things. Like, like my coloring book, for instance, just about to come out with it. Like, I got to go way farther with detail and little tiny things and layers that I wouldn't even know how to do in a tattoo.
Yeah.
But because it's on a piece of paper, it'll never change like it will in the skin. I was able to just kind of push myself artistically. So, and I probably wouldn't want to put any of those drawings on a body. I'd want to redraw it for the body, because this is the other thing too, is like, I have lettering tattoos, and a lot of us do, and a lot of people like it. So take lettering for an example, like, looking at our storefront here, we've got horizontal lettering, very easy to read. I think that's where lettering belongs. Is like, it's meant for advertisement, it's meant for paper. So when you put it on the curvy body, it doesn't always look cool, because it's like those straight lines are following the curvature of the body. And so now it looks goofy, whereas it looks fine on paper. So that's kind of like the thing with like my coloring book pages, or any of the stuff maybe we draw for fun. It's like, this belongs on paper. I would totally draw it differently if it were going on skin, taking into consideration the curvature of the body, maybe the flow of the anatomy. I do, however, when people are like, oh, I've just got this terrible thumbnail sketch, or I drew this and it's awful, I'm like, I get it. I appreciate that you're saying that, but that still kind of at least helps me get inside your brain a little bit. I think that when it gets really tricky is when it's like, yeah, my daughter's an artist and she is amazing.
Yeah.
And you see the drawing, like, I think you're just being nice. You're being a nice parent.
Yeah.
No offense, but it's like, can I, is it okay if I redraw this
Yeah.
to be suitable for a tattoo? 9 times out of 10, people are like, yes. Rarely does anybody say like, no, it needs to be exactly like this. In that case, you just politely decline it, give them reasons why. And I think that's the other thing too. And maybe, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, is that finding an artist who cares about what they do isn't going to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
They're going to say, I hear what you want. That's a cool idea. It won't work well as a tattoo, and here's why. Because it's like over 10 years, that's not going to look very good. Here's why. Once you educate people, they're like, oh, I get it. And so sometimes whenever, somebody brings in like an amazing drawing, whether it is or isn't, it usually should be redrawn. Because the other thing too is like, well, somebody else drew this. I'm going to be forced to follow their method, their lines, their way of thinking. I think you'll end up with a better tattoo if you just let me kind of redo that.
Right.
Use this completely as the inspiration, the reference, but I'm going to draw it like how I'm comfortable drawing and tattooing things, instead of just kind of forcing. So then that almost contradicts though, like the days of Flash where all the walls were full of other people's drawings essentially. But chances are those were drawn by tattooers too. So like, okay, now all I have to do is follow this appropriately drawn design that's meant for tattoos. So I don't know if that answers the question or if I jumped around.
No, you're right on it. I think for people who aren't involved in this world, you have to make them understand that just because something looks good on you right now, like it doesn't mean it's going to look good moving forward. It may look good for a couple months, maybe a couple years, and then you're going to look at this thing, and it's going to be falling out or blown out,
or fuzz together. Exactly.
And I think that's the biggest thing, especially with back to we've talked about before, just like the whole Instagram tattoo buzz where it's like, let's do this, it's pretty ridiculous. And then people are like, well, I saw it on here, so I'll go find somebody to go do it. And I don't know.
Is that artist experienced enough, or do they work with somebody who's experienced enough that has been able to see these trends and to be able to again kind of help aid in a person's decision making? Granted, you're giving them education as to why, like a handful of years ago before I opened the shop, I was really trying to push biomech because I love it, and I did love it, and I still do. So tribal was kind of dying off, and so people would come in, they'd want tribal, and I'm like, that's actually it happened fairly recently. I'm like, well, that's cool. We could do that. Have you ever heard of biomech?
Yeah, I got something better.
And they're like, no, what's that? And I point to a print or something that we've got. I'm like, for the same amount of time and money, you could probably get something like that. Or we can go with the flat black thing that's very one-dimensional. And so they're like, yeah, let's do that.
I mean,
but
and looking in somebody, like even me, if you told me that, I would think that this would be I'll just do this, it's cheaper. Like that's badass.
You get more for the same amount of money. And it looks cooler. It's got different levels and layers and just more interesting to look at. And I'll do that.
I think when that like started to like click in my head, the whole like how to draw a tattoo or how to draw more things that are more geared towards tattoo is when like I really just understood like you are taking this metal, these needles, and manipulating the needles, manipulating the skin to put ink inside of the skin. It's not a pencil. It's, you are cutting in a way, penetrating the skin. So like, I was like, got it. All these little things, it's like not going to work.
Well, and then after that's all done, then the pigment living in the skin,
Yeah.
that's going to move over time.
Mm-hmm.
Your body is always chipping away at it because it's a foreign object.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally not supposed to be doing this to
Yeah.
the body, but we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And so our body knows that. And so it's just always trying to get rid of it. And so that's why tattoos fuzz.
Mm-hmm.
Colors drop out. Some colors do. Colors will fade. Black and gray gets softer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, yes, can we do the face the size of a quarter?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, sure can, but we probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a background little, in the rubble of, and it's not an important piece.
Right.
Sure, then we can do that. But yeah, tattoos age
Yeah.
with the skin.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't on paper.
Mm-hmm. And that right there goes back to just like caring about what you do and like not only respecting your craft, your work that's going to be walking around, but like this is permanent.
Yeah.
You're respecting that person enough to say, hey, we can do better than this.
And maybe that, kind of goes back to the first question of like, or one of the first couple of questions is like, how do you find an artist? Or, I think that was one of the questions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Does that person just genuinely care about their fellow mankind?
Mm-hmm.
Draw whatever conclusions you want about me, but I really try hard to like let those that are around me and the clients and really whoever just know that like, hey, I'd probably run into a burning building after you, or I'd help you if you had a flat tire or whatever, if you need money, any of that stuff. And so, and I think you can kind of get that vibe. I think at least most people can pick up on that. Like, quite frankly, I'm always skeptical of people whenever they first start working here.
Of course, you have to.
Of course, you're just going to put your best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
But especially with you, is like, you're well-spoken and you're very respectful. That you can't really bullshit your way through that for a prolonged amount of time. It's like, okay, I think this is a genuine value of this person, and that's who I want working with me. And I think it's on the basic level is just, does your tattoo artist or your potential tattoo artist seem like they care about people? And that's a pretty good starting point.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
So, because if they do, and your tattoo's cool and your idea is cool and you guys mesh well together, then you're going to have a great tattoo. If that person genuinely cares about people also, and your idea or your request isn't suitable for tattooing, they should care enough to say no. They're going to lose money.
Yeah.
They're going to lose that appointment.
Right.
But
you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, completely. That's probably, I'd say, one of the top things. I'm glad we hit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So without giving away any of your sacred tips or tricks or anything for you, like, and I guess maybe we touched on it a little bit right there, but like, what's your process of giving somebody a tattoo that's like, it'll hold, it looks nice and bold, it's well saturated? Like, what do you do for somebody to ensure that? Some of your process, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it depends on the each tattoo, of course. I think the first thing, I'm just thinking over all the drawings that I've done, and so anytime you draw, because these days we typically draw on an iPad, it's super easy to zoom it in down to the pixel and work on it, and then you print it out and it's like this big.
Yeah.
Like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So that's usually one of the things that I'll do kind of first and foremost with a lot of my wanna-dos. Almost every one of my wanna-dos I like to print out and see. And even if I advertise it like, oh, this one measures roughly 4x6, if I print it out and it's too small, I'm gonna make it bigger.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, hey, I know I said 4x6, but it's actually going to live better in your skin at 5x7. So I think first and foremost, it's like, is there enough? Is the size right that's suitable for that design so that it can age properly over time? When you're talking about larger pieces, so let's say those are like one-shot designs, like just bangers or whatever. For larger pieces, I usually like to try to design things. And even that's been kind of like a mix. Like one, I usually tell people like I want people to know what your tattoo is from across the street.
Yeah.
I want it to have clarity. It's
Mm-hmm.
legible. The one that I was just working on yesterday, like the ogre sleeve,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I do things like that, I love like kind of visualizing almost like this book cover or something. Maybe that goes back to like the album art covers
I
and
see
stuff.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, what if we do this guy here and we do like a mountain back here, and then the other guy's sword is coming over the mountain. Like none of that would exist in real
Yeah.
life, but that would be super cool.
And you're almost thinking, I mean, here's the arm.
Yeah.
You're seeing it wide open and how it can
Yeah.
swell together. I totally
Yeah,
get what you're
yeah. And
saying.
even where I placed like that one ogre that we did
Mhm.
yesterday on the dude's arm, it's like, you know, I need to bring him over this way so that his one foot goes in front of the wrist bone and the other one kind of goes behind it.
Mhm.
And so it's like that's composition. I think it's like the proper layout and composition of working with the human body and cohesively with the tattoo design. And even, yesterday, like the guy requested a specific ogre, and I'm like, well, we can do it for sure. Like I'm happy to do it, and I actually like this one better. But we need to change the rest of the composition from what I had before, because in order to continue to make it work, we just need to change up a couple things, because we had to put this guy here, make him bigger. So then of course, then it just comes down to like your basic fundamentals. Are my lines clean?
Yeah.
Admittedly so. Like I haven't been doing this as long as other people, but I've been doing it for a while. For me and my body and my hands and my back and my eyes, I've learned my limitations. I don't feel like I can successfully do like the small little things anymore. I don't know. Maybe it's just age.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that if it is, because I don't like seeing imperfections that I can't correct.
Yes.
And by the way, I think that's the other thing to let people know is there is no such thing as a perfect tattoo.
Oh yeah, that's a great thing to touch on.
There never will be. Like I could show you the tattoos that I have from some of the people that I look up to, and it's like, see, and that doesn't make it a bad tattoo by any means. It's just like, this is handcrafted art still. That's not an excuse to do bad work. It's okay. Well, even the pros screw up, and so there's no such thing as a perfect tattoo. However, we should try to apply that and or know our limitations when it's like, I probably shouldn't do that stuff anymore, because I don't walk away from it feeling as stoked as I once was. So now, thankfully, it's like, well, I am teaching people who are younger than me. Let's have them do that, because they will honestly do a much better job for you. It just happened. And I got to tattoo a couple that requested me to do something. I'm like, quite frankly, I just can't do that stuff that well. She can. So, and she got to pick up appointments. And so it helps everybody, I think. But I really don't remember where I was going with that. Oh, I think it's just, I think that's part of what goes into a tattoo is like learning your abilities and your limitations.
It's important.
Maybe like your desires, what talent you have, what capability. Like I won't try a color portrait. I just don't want to. I'm afraid of that. I respect that enough. Could I maybe pull it off? Probably, maybe. I'm not even going to act confident. I know other people who can, and I'll just refer them to those people.
No, but nobody can be great at every.
Right. And I mean, however fun that would be, I think it's cool to be diverse.
Yeah,
for sure. And maybe that's another thing too that we could throw in this too is the artist diverse. If you're looking to have your arm blacked out, then one, if a tattoo artist has one of the three components, or those three components: clean line, smooth shading, solid saturation. If they've got that down, cool, they're your guy.
Yeah.
But don't ask that person to do, maybe a color portrait on you. It's just like, I don't know. Is that in their portfolio? Is that in their wheelhouse? If that's, and no, not knocking anybody, but because there, some of those people who do that work, it's pretty phenomenal, actually, the black work, and I respect it. It's like tribal artists, like, dude, there's some tribal artists who know how to do it, and do it well. Could I do it? Yeah, he could probably do it better. And so I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, you are. Yeah. I was just thinking about that this morning as I was getting ready. Actually, I used to get that doing like video editing and stuff all the time, where it's like people would be like, "I really, really like your work.
Yeah.
Will you do something like this that isn't your work?" It touches exactly what you mean. Like,
right.
At the time, I definitely could have done that, but I'm not gonna apply it as well. I'm not gonna be super excited about it necessarily. So there may not be as much heart into it as I want. Exactly. And it's just, again, it's just being respectful enough to yourself and your client.
And then that is to say, on the flip side of that coin, there was like I think a couple of years ago where I tried to do, for the whole year, nothing but wanna-dos. No custom requests. Oh no, actually I took 10 custom requests for the whole year.
Okay.
And the rest was wanna-dos. One that didn't work out too well, just because I stayed pretty busy, but not busy enough. And I ended up, and whatever. I tried it. But, the reality is, like, however cool it would be to just constantly do your wanna-dos every single day, that's not always reality. You do have to pay bills, and you do, have to support yourself or your family. So you might have to do the occasional whatever thing, as long as you're not screwing the person over just for the money.
Yes.
And that's what I think that's what I think is also plaguing today's tattoo business, is that I'll say this, it's the easiest way for an artist to make money. Because have you ever tried to sell a painting or a drawing or prints? Yeah. Oftentimes they don't sell.
Yeah.
Now I know other tattooers who, man, I mean, their stuff is coveted and people will pay a ridiculous amount of money for it. Well, that's not every one of us. But, and so these people are coming into the business, the culture, whatever you want to call it, because it's quick, it's easy to make money. And whereas that's a great bonus, that should also be earned too. It sounds cool, like, oh, I charge $100 an hour. Yeah, man, not many people can say that. And so when you get to say that, that's pretty cool, and it puffs you up a little bit. But I think the big difference is, do you deserve $100 an hour?
Yeah. Does your work reflect that, and your catalog reflect that?
I saw somebody locally in Minneapolis, Twin Cities area, $200 an hour.
Really?
Yeah. And like, I've been tattooed by badasses.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say it. And I've done the math. I'm like, that still doesn't even equal $200 an hour.
Yeah.
And this dude will stomp the living crap out of you artistically.
Yeah.
On paper and skin.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how does a person, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to get off on a negative tangent.
No, I totally get what you mean.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's so crazy. And then the other hand, I've worked for shops where I come in and I'm like, this is your minimum? Like, you guys are all better. Like, we should be charging this. Like, this is an established shop. Let's bump the rate. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so there is that too. There's like, well, that's really nice of you to charge so little, but you kind of deserve more. I mean, I think honestly, there's very few people who deserve $200 an hour, especially in Minnesota. I could probably count on 1.5 hands the people who would probably deserve that. I'm not one of them. It's like all the other dudes that are like, yep, should probably pay that.
Yeah.
So, all right. That
Yeah,
was
well, and it, you know, in like the blue collar world, you're not going to come in 2 years of experience making as much as the guy with 17 years of experience.
hopefully.
So it's like me
Yeah,
coming
hopefully
in
not.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
I need as much as you're making. Like you look like a jackass.
Yeah, you know, but the crazy thing is for some reason, societally, if that's even a word, that's happening.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to start on the French fryer. I want to manage the McDonald's. I bet you do.
It's a totem pole. That's the always say.
Yeah,
Work your way up
exactly.
it.
You're the low man on the totem pole. Yeah, that phrase exists for a reason.
Yeah, right.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Because really, yeah, that's another podcast.
How important? I know we were talking about this again. Like I told you, I had somebody, a tattoo artist. They're like, yeah, the trick to getting good tattoos is like just listening to your tattoo artist, trusting them, whatever. How important do you feel it is to trust your artist's vision? They come with you with something, and it's the whole, I like this.
Yeah.
Let me interpret it
Yeah.
as a tattoo and see what you think. How important do you think that is?
I think it's super critical. I guess the analogy or whatever would be is if you needed a plumber to come into your house, would you tell them how to do their job? I mean, if you did and you could, then why aren't you just doing it yourself? But if you're hiring a professional in a trade that's skilled, then and you've vetted them, you know, you've gone through the process, and you do quote unquote trust them, then trust them.
Right.
Let them do that. Now, I think there is an underbelly of that too, which I've heard, and that's artists who are like, well, not only should you trust me, but I'm not even going to do what you asked. I'm going to do this thing that I want. It's completely different. Like, you're being an asshole. That's being overconfident. And that's, I don't think that's a good way to build trust. It's like, wow, I didn't want a Grim Reaper. I wanted a flying toaster with a banner that said Mom on it.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I want to do today. There is that spectrum, believe it or not. I've heard stories, I've seen it, and it's just like, whoa, dude, you need to be knocked down a few pegs.
That might be where that $200 an hour and the whole ego thing kind of, it's like, I'm above doing your toaster with the banner.
Right.
This is what I'm doing today.
So that's a good word, ego, and maybe that's where it's like, again, I think if your artist is trying to explain that we should go down this path, but you're insisting you go down this path, if they're saying this is why we should go down this path and not your path, I think you should respect that, because again, they could just do your idea and 5 years later it sucks. It might work, but it, you know, I think I get that. You know, a lot of people are like, well, I'm a graphic designer, and so I do this. Like, no, you don't. You do this for signs, business cards. You know, not saying that a graphic designer can't come in and do badass tattoos. They can. That is possible, but it's like, don't put me, though, in that corner. Don't, you know, yes, you can design well, but can you design for the skin? You know, does your art alter over time? Chances are it doesn't. I mean, other than like maybe a sign fading or a banner fading or whatever. But so yeah, I think, and again, I think it comes with experience too, is like an experienced artist is probably, you know, gonna be able to kind of navigate that conversation a little bit better. As far, and even honestly coming down to, and I've had to do this too, is like, can I ask you a question? Why did you pick me to do your work? You know, if you're wanting me to if you're just kind of forcing my hand, then why did you choose me? And it kind of makes them, I think, hopefully in a way, like answer that question and go, yeah, do I trust you, or am I just asking you to replicate, be like a copy machine, essentially? So
yeah, and I think again, like full circle, it goes back to the initial thing we were talking about like finding the right artist, finding the right shop, and it's like building that trust or having like it's so important because like if I'm getting tattooed by you, I know you fairly well.
Yeah.
Like just do whatever you like. You know way
Yeah.
better than I know this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
so important to just find somebody you trust to.
Right. And maybe I think that's great because a lot of even me, when I go get tattooed, I don't care to see the drawing beforehand. I don't want to see the drawing beforehand. Lately, there has not been a drawing beforehand.
Yeah.
But I totally trust this person.
Yeah.
And when I see the drawing, it's sick, but it's like 10% of what the actual tattoo is going to be. So that's exciting, and so that does take time to develop with between an artist and a client. To where, yeah, it's great whenever somebody's just like, I don't care, you just do your thing. I trust you.
Yeah.
I want this flower. Just do your thing. That's cool. That does take time, and so maybe for the person who has just had bad experiences, they're maybe or just no tattoos, and they're starting this journey of getting good tattoos. That takes time. Go in and get like a banger from them. Get a wanna do.
Yeah, that's a really good way to.
If they draw wanna do's, get their wanna do's, because then it's called a wanna do because they really want to do that, and that's going to be a good kind of tester, I guess. Maybe after you've met with them or chatted with them or stalked their Instagram or their Facebook or whatever, and you decided that in your mind that they're maybe the fit for you.
Yeah, I got tattooed by this guy, Adam, in Minneapolis, and I have gotten a couple of like his wanna-dos or whatever. And the last one, I was like, show me your flash book or whatever. Like, I want a panther. And we were just gonna do like a classic crawling panther or whatever. And I like show up, and he's like, so I got like an idea. I could see it, and he's like showed me, but it was like a Sacred Heart with the panther crawling out. And he's like, yeah, cool. I just thought this would be. I was like, yeah, do it, man.
It's got a panther.
I could see how excited he is, and like, I love it.
Right, right. Yeah,
you get that good product when somebody's excited. When it's a really good. And like moving forward, I would totally get tattooed by Adam again. He like gave me a good product, gave me a good experience.
Right.
And to me, that's important.
Yeah, that is. It's huge. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Kind of sidestepping here. For you, as I know, like you had tattooed yourself, done all those things. You as a young man getting tattooed, going into the tattooing world. Like, what are some advice that you would give yourself, like when you were initially getting tattooed? And
well, I am lucky that I got my very first tattoo by a legit person in a legit shop.
Yeah.
Not saying I maybe wouldn't have had I not been able to go through that experience. Well, I kind of went the reverse with people. I got a professionally done, well-crafted tattoo as my first tattoo. And then the following tattoos, including the ones I did on myself, were just complete turds.
Yeah.
And I would say to my younger self, be patient.
Yeah.
Wait. And and I'm guilty. This is totally probably like the foundation of maybe this episode. It's like sometimes people don't know what a good and bad tattoo is. Hopefully after this they will. But some of us just don't care. We're just like, I want to get my arm tattooed.
Yeah.
And we do, and then we're like, no. Now I got to get it lasered.
Yeah.
Or blacked out, whatever people do. And so I think I would just say, yeah, just wait. Take your time. Try to be patient. Hold off that excitement. Meet more people. Because I think early on, aside from tattooing myself, I didn't know that many people, and I was broke, and so I just found somebody in Brainerd that would trade amateur tattoos with me. I'd do amateur tattoos on him, he'd do them on me, and now I want to have all that stuff lasered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
looking back on my younger self, similar thing. It's like I have $100 to spend. Like now, like a lot of those tattoos, I just feel like I'd rather cover up. You know, it's like I wish I would have saved the extra couple $100 to get what I really wanted,
Sure.
instead of just like I really want to go get tattooed today.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I wonder what else there would be. I mean, I would say, make better investments.
Mm-hmm.
That's coming from the angle of being a tattooer, but stuff's expensive, man. Good equipment is expensive. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time that I didn't buy a machine on eBay, and I bought one from a legit machine builder. I was blown. I'm like, dude, this thing can tattoo by itself. It doesn't even need me.
Mm-hmm.
It was so effortless.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything that goes up and down can like stick a needle in the skin, but it's a complete difference whenever it's like well built and handcrafted by a person who actually tattoos. So, I wonder what else. I would tell myself. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Invest in your career.
Yeah.
Be patient. Patience is hard when you're young. It's hard in general, but especially when you're young and think you know everything, it's impossible.
This is true.
But yeah, I think we touched on a lot of really good points.
Cool.
Just one last reminder: what are the 3 things that make a good tattoo for somebody looking?
Sure. Clean lines. So lines that aren't squiggly. Lines that are preferably solid. So clean lines. Smooth shading. What that looks like is it airy and soft, or is it splotchy and
sharp edges?
Yeah, that's a good one. Right. Yeah, sharp edges. Right. I mean, unless you're looking for a super traditional artist, and then that's part of that style. But smooth shading, as it would be in like a nice black and gray tattoo or a portrait. Is it smooth? Is it, do all the values blend and go well together? So soft shading and then solid saturation. That's probably like one of the other keys, I would say, next to clean lines, is solid saturation is so important. That's how that color is going to be the most vibrant in the skin. It's going to last the longest, and it's going to look the most professional. So clean lines, smooth shading, solid saturation, or solid color, you could say. That's the bottom basic steps that make a good tattoo. And then if you find an artist that excels and grows on those things, you're in good company. Granted, they're a good person, and you jive well with them. So then there's that. So, but yeah, on the surface, that's what makes a good tattoo.
Cool.
Those are the basic fundamentals.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good wrapping point.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's do some tattoos.
Yeah, let's do it.